Hello, I'm here with Maria Teresa Hernandez. She is with the Orion Media Group under the
Public group.
Public Group. I have to remember all these things. It's great to have Maria here because Maria is an expert in advertising and media buying. She's a sales and marketing guru, and she's young, and we have her here on Passion Time for all those great reasons. But first, before we start the interview, I always ask my guest, how are you living your passion? How did you find your passion, and how are you living your passion?
Sure. I think growing up, I always kind of was my own salesperson. So everyone used to say, you should go into marketing. That was kind of if I wanted it, I was going to find a way to get it, and if I wanted you to buy into my ideas, I was going to sell it to you.
So even early on, as a child.
Early on, although my mom would say she probably would have pegged me for a lawyer because I always fought for what I wanted. So I went to school, and one thing I was good at, I was academically inclined. I loved to go to school, and I knew that was my ticket. We didn't grow up
rich or wealthy.
Exactly. But I knew that academics was definitely a way to achieve those things. And so, I went to school, and when I decided I was going to go to college, I didn't have parents that had saved up a big trust fund for me. And
right.
I just, I was always into researching and finding ways, and I knew that I would have to take out grants and scholarships and put myself through college. And so, it just so happened that, when I graduated, it was right at the time of 9/11. And so I realized, maybe it's good to kind of continue on because the economy and the job market wasn't the strongest. And so I decided, let me go to grad school. I put myself through grad school. I finished in under 2 years. So at this point, I'm 22 with a master's degree in marketing, but no real job experience. Yep. But I will say I networked a lot throughout my time. And just out of school, I got the great opportunity to work for an event marketing company out of Chicago, which was my hometown. And I ended up landing into a sales role, even though I got a master's in marketing, but it was for a marketing agency that produced Hispanic concert events and sporting events and experiential events. So great for a 20-something-year-old.
Right.
And I was selling sponsorships in the Hispanic market. So I was pitching these properties to clients of major corporations that manage Hispanic budgets, as well as agency partners. So great time, fun.
Give me some examples of those.
Yeah, it was great because this production company owned the rights to many talented individuals, and at the time, reggaeton was really big. It was the mid 2000s. So Daddy Yankee, Don Omar, and then also Ana Gabriel, Mark Anthony, Juanes, was one of them. I was young and I didn't always know, some of these folks. My first year, I remember I was in Anaheim, California, and I had traveled with my boss, and she was kind of showing me the ropes. And part of it was not only selling properties, but we could have fun and actually go and make sure that, because part of the sponsorship was, meet and greets and making sure that they were going as planned. And I was backstage, and it was a rock Spanish band and Spanish rock, and I knew nothing about that genre. Grew up in urban Chicago. I remember being backstage, and these folks, group, I thought it was the bandmates, and they were all talking, and we were running a little late, and this guy walks in. He's in an Adidas tracksuit, and he happens to sit next to me, and we're chatting away, and I needed to brush up on my Spanish, so he's laughing at my Spanish, and got comfortable finally, and I said to him, so ¿cuál es este Juanes? Who is Juanes? Who is this guy? And the whole room burst out laughing, and he looks at me and he says, well, that would be me. So I think those were like...
He's such a nice guy, though. He's so down to earth.
Exactly.
He didn't treat you badly.
At all.
He didn't humiliate you. Yeah.
So, I made sure, moving forward, since I was going to be selling his, sponsorship properties, that I made sure to get much more friendly with him. But it was a great time. We, as a result, though, I made sure, it wasn't all just fun. I made sure that when I was building these relationships with clients and agencies, for me, it was a Rolodex that I was building, relationships of partners, and, letting them get to know me. And, after a few years working there, I realized that I wanted to come to New York. Traveling to New York often, I knew it was the mecca of advertising and marketing.
Of course, yes.
And I built quite a bit of just relationships here in New York City. And, being a Chicago girl, it's almost taboo to move to New York City, right? Because it's your direct competitor.
You're betraying your city.
Yeah.
I know.
It was only supposed to be for 1 year. I actually moved out here, and 3 of my girlfriends quit their jobs and came with me.
So you weren't totally alone.
Yeah. So we moved out. We rented a house in Astoria, Queens, and I didn't have a job lined up, but just before the idea kind of peaked and I was interviewing, just throwing my resume out there, and I had somebody say to me, if you could be here to start in 3 weeks, the job is yours. And that's how I made it. I literally, sold all my things, rented out my condo that I had just bought as a 26-year-old, and moved out to New York City. And it was about taking a leap of faith. And right after I moved out here, that same year was the recession of 2008. So not the best timing, but it was almost just what it was meant to be, because I got laid off 11 months into my New York stint. And I refused to leave, though. It was almost perfect timing because my condo in Chicago was going to be available. So everybody was like, perfect, you did your 11 months, come home.
But you didn't. You talked about networking.
Yep.
And how important that was in building a Rolodex.
Sure.
How do you do that? Because people tell me all the time, you need to network. What does that mean? Can you describe what networking means exactly?
Sure. I think we're fortunate in 2016 we have so many resources and ways to find, you have Google, you have online, so find out what you're passionate about. If you're in a particular industry that, let's say, is finance, or it could be, marketing or whatever, go online, find out what, maybe clubs or groups are in your area. There's
part of the groups.
There's meetups.com, there's Facebook groups. Figure out what you want to grow your own network and your own universe of contacts, and participate, join them. I think that was big for me, is being a part of even the diversity groups. It doesn't even have to be industry related, but your ethnic group,
Tell me some of the groups that you joined in Chicago and when you first got to New York, for example.
Sure. So I was involved directly through the Chamber of Commerce, through the different neighborhoods in Chicago. I think that was really helpful, and it was only because one of my best friends was a realtor, so she was always invited to these different chamber events, and through there I made a lot of great connections. There was the Hispanic organizations that are for Hispanic women, with leadership, things like that. Here in New York City, I'm affiliated with AWNI, Advertising Women of New York. I am also part of my organization. So my parent company is Interpublic Group, and we have about a good several dozen agencies that live within the IPG, Interpublic Group family. But we have business resource groups, and one of them is Somos, which is our Hispanic business resource group, and I am the national chair. So being a part of that has really put me in a position to network across our fellow business groups nationwide, as well as folks within the company. There's over 40,000 employees, so it enables me to leverage my position as the chair to reach out and introduce myself. But I think the biggest fear to overcome is just introducing yourself. Figuring out who's who and saying, I want to meet you. Have a hit list. So look up who else is affiliated with those groups and say, I want to meet these people, and have a reason why, right? So tell a story when you're introducing yourselves, and more times than none, they'd love to meet you too.
Right. Now you are working for Orion Group you used to be a sales. You just got promoted. Tell me about what you do and what has been really fun about it and what's challenging.
Sure. The big question I always get is, what do you do? So I work for a media agency under IPG, and we have a really unique model. So we are a buying agency at our core. The only difference is that we enable clients, so big clients who have big media budgets and they're going to go out and buy advertising, rather than pay 100% cash. We have a really unique model where we say, hey, you know what? You don't have to pay 100% cash. You could part fund some of your advertising buy with assets. It could be depreciated assets. It could be real estate. It could be machinery. It could be capital equipment. It could be gift cards. We have quite a few clients that like to use, they're in the theme park space and they like to use tickets to their parks. And it's great because rather than cannibalize their existing sales efforts, we have this unique offering where we sell them through our internal IPG family. It's a closed network, and folks love us because they get access to these discounted, tickets or gift cards. So it's really great. So I was on the sales side for many years, bringing in new business. And then recently I shifted over to client strategy. So I'm a VP on the client strategy team. And part of my role is managing an existing business. So organic growth as well as maintaining the existing partnership and making sure that we're trending as forecasted.
And what do you love about this job and what do you find challenging?
I think the fun thing about it is that every client is different. So every client has different assets they want to leverage, and I'm no expert by any means of all the assets we've taken on. We've done everything from, again, packaged utensils to glass, from spirits companies that, we need to recycle the actual beer bottles. It's always fun, and I think that's the fun part of being able to sit in front of a client and say, not only can we help you save on your media, your advertising efforts, and guarantee your strategy is going to stay intact, but we can help you offset some of the losses that you're seeing. So this is when the CFO perks up and sits in the room. Sure. And to be able to sit in a conference room as a young Latina and have 12 people in front of me, and I could, propose this amazing value to them and say, hey, let me help you with your overall bottom line. Let me help you achieve your goals if you're struggling in sales, and come up with very unique and crafty solutions for them. And that's exciting.
That's because it's something that is challenging and creative.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one last question, that is, what advice would you give young people that may want to get into your field on how to succeed in this field?
Sure. Find a mentor. Look up, in the industry, the leaders that look like you. If you are a woman, if you are a Latina, if you're African American, find some commonality, and lean in. As Sheryl Sandberg says, don't be afraid. Reach out and say, obviously find something that really intrigues you about that person, but say, would you mind being someone that I could turn to for guidance, for advice, and ask them how they did it. And don't just find one mentor. I have probably 5 or 6 mentors, and every year I try to find a different mentor, because every year we're changing, right? You have to constantly want to grow. So constantly find that one person that's going to champion for you, and don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to take risks.
Okay, Maria Teresa Hernandez, thanks for being with us. And we're here in New York and on 3rd Avenue. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you next time on Passion Time.